am Jarvis, 23 years old, the only daughter of parents who should have never had children. That night, when my jaw cracked under my mother's fist because I dared to defend myself, my father just laughed and said, "Now you'll learn to keep that gutter mouth shut." Mom towered over me, her eyes wild with rage. Despite the blinding pain, I smiled through my broken teeth. They had no idea what was coming. If you're watching this, please let me know where you're from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe. My story might just save someone else. From the outside, we were the picture-perfect family living in a pristine neighborhood in Denver, Colorado. Our sprawling ranch-style home with its perfectly manicured gardens and circular driveway could have graced the cover of Better Homes and Gardens. My mother, Rebecca Martinez, was a successful real estate mogul who controlled half the luxury market in the city. Everyone respected her ruthless business acumen. She sponsored charity galas, donated to the Children's Hospital, and always had the perfect power suit and winning smile at community events. My father, David Martinez, was a prominent plastic surgeon with a practice that catered to Denver's elite. He drove a gleaming BMW, wore Armani suits, and had the kind of confident smile that made people trust him with their faces and their secrets. Together, they portrayed an image of success and sophistication that everyone envied. But images can be deceiving, and the perfect family portrait we displayed to the world was nothing but a carefully constructed lie. I did have a few precious memories scattered like diamonds in the darkness of my childhood. My 8th birthday stands out as one of those rare perfect days. Mom had just closed a multi-million-dollar deal and was in an unusually generous mood. They rented a bounce house for our backyard and invited all my classmates from Cherry Creek Elementary. For one magical day, I felt like a normal kid with normal parents who actually loved me. Dad even carried me on his shoulders that day. Something so rare I can count those moments on one hand. Another golden memory was our only family vacation when I was 10. We spent a week in Aspen, and for those 7 days, the constant tension seemed to melt away in the mountain air. Mom left her phone in the hotel room, and Dad actually laughed genuinely instead of his practiced social chuckle. I learned to ski that week, and when I fell, Dad helped me up with patient encouragement rather than his usual criticism. I kept a small pine cone from that trip, hidden in my desk drawer, a physical reminder that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. At school, I was always a straight-A student at Denver Academy. Had to be. Anything less would trigger consequences I learned to avoid at all costs. But my passion was writing. I filled notebook after notebook with stories, poems, and dreams of escape. I wrote about faraway places I'd visit someday and created characters brave enough to stand up for themselves. My English teachers always praised my work, but I never dared show my writing to my parents. Somehow, I knew instinctively that they'd see it as rebellion. Proof that I had thoughts beyond their control. My dreams centered on attending Northwestern University, far from Colorado. Their journalism program was legendary, and more importantly, it was over 1,000 miles from Denver. I imagined walking through Chicago's bustling streets, disappearing into crowds of strangers, finally free to be whoever I wanted to be. I researched scholarships secretly at the school library, knowing my parents would never willingly pay for me to escape their reach. Amanda Rodriguez was my only true friend who knew fragments of my reality. We met in 6th grade when she transferred from Phoenix. She caught me crying in the bathroom after Mom had shredded my creative writing assignment, calling it useless garbage that won't pay bills. Amanda never pushed for details I wasn't ready to share, but she offered quiet support that kept me sane. We had sleepovers at her house whenever possible. Small respites of normalcy that reminded me what family could actually look like. Her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Rodriguez, were gentle people who discussed disagreements calmly and never raised their voices, much less their hands. The contrast to my home was both beautiful and heartbreaking. Mrs. Patterson, my 10th grade English teacher, was the first adult to recognize something in my writing that hinted at my hidden reality. After reading a story where I'd thinly disguised my situation as fiction, she asked me to stay after class. "You have remarkable talent, Jarvis," she told me, her eyes full of concern. The emotions in your writing feel incredibly authentic. You know you can talk to me anytime, right? I nodded but said nothing. I wasn't ready to speak the truth aloud, but her recognition planted a seed of hope. Maybe my words could eventually become my escape route. I became expert at creating a public persona that revealed nothing of my private hell. I smiled at appropriate times, participated in the right activities, and maintained just enough social engagement to avoid suspicion without inviting scrutiny. I was friendly but never close with most classmates. I attended school events but always left early with polite excuses. I became invisible in the most visible way possible, hiding in plain sight. In my mind, I constructed elaborate fantasies of freedom. I imagined turning 18 and walking out that front door forever. I dreamed of a tiny apartment somewhere vibrant and anonymous, with neighbors who didn't know my name or care about my comings and goings. I pictured a life where I could speak without calculating every word, where I could laugh without fear, where I could simply exist without constantly monitoring the emotional temperature around me. But reality was more complicated. Even as I dreamed of escape, I understood the invisible chains binding me to that house. Financial dependence, a lifetime of conditioned fear, and that insidious voice whispering that maybe my parents were right about me. Maybe I was ungrateful. Maybe I deserved this treatment. Maybe the outside world would be even worse. But hope is stubborn. It grows in the darkest places, finding nourishment in the smallest cracks of light. Despite everything, hope continued flickering inside me. A tiny flame I protected fiercely against the constant winds trying to extinguish it. Someday, I told myself, someday I would be free. The first clear sign that my home was different from others came when I was 15. I'd always sensed the difference, felt the toxic tension that filled our house like poisonous gas, but that day crystallized everything. I brought home my report card, nervous but quietly proud. All A's except for chemistry, where I'd earned a B+. Mr. Thompson was notoriously tough. Most students had scored much lower. I thought my parents might actually be pleased, or at least not upset. I found Mom in her home office, surrounded by property listings and contracts. I handed her the report card with trembling hands, watching her face carefully for any shift in expression. She scanned it slowly, her face darkening when she reached that B+. Without warning, her hand shot out, striking my cheek with enough force to make me stumble backward. "What is this?" she demanded, shaking the paper in my face. "Do you think mediocrity is acceptable in this house? Do you think the Martinez name settles for less than perfection?" Dad appeared in the doorway, drawn by the commotion. Instead of defending me, he simply shook his head disapprovingly. "You need to try harder, Jarvis," he said coldly. "Don't disappoint your mother like this again." That night, I cried silently into my pillow, careful not to make a sound. It wasn't the physical pain that hurt most. It was realizing that neither parent would ever protect me. In that moment, I understood I was completely alone in my own home. The control escalated gradually after that incident. Mom began monitoring my phone obsessively, reading every text message and checking my call history. She installed tracking apps that alerted her to my exact location at all times. My curfew became non-negotiable. 5 p.m. on weekdays, 7 p.m. on weekends, with absolutely no exceptions. She began screening my friends, forbidding me from spending time with anyone she deemed beneath our family's standards, or from families she considered inferior to ours. One particularly humiliating incident happened during a study group at Amanda's house. We were preparing for midterms. 6 of us gathered around her kitchen table with textbooks and notes spread everywhere. Without warning, Mom appeared at the door, having tracked my phone's location. She didn't bother with social niceties, simply announcing that I needed to come home immediately. My classmates stared in awkward silence as I gathered my things, my face burning with shame. "I specifically told you to ask permission for any activities," she said in the car, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. "Study groups are wastes of time. Kids just gossip and get distracted." "But Mom, we were actually studying. Mrs. Garcia assigned us to work together on." "Don't talk back to me," she snapped. "Your grades are your responsibility alone. I don't want to hear about group projects or study partners. You'll study at home where I can supervise your progress." That night I started my secret diary. I stole a composition notebook from school and carefully pried up a loose floorboard under my bed to create a hiding spot. In those pages I wrote everything I couldn't say aloud. Every hurt, every fear, every injustice, both small and massive. The diary became my lifeline, the only place I could be completely honest. I wrote about the unfairness of my parents' rules, my dreams of Northwestern, and increasingly detailed accounts of the escalating abuse. I became skilled at lying, creating elaborate cover stories to explain bruises or my frequent absences from social events. I learned to smile convincingly while saying I couldn't attend birthday parties because of family obligations, never revealing that the obligation was my parents' decree that I stay home and study. I perfected the art of wearing long sleeves in Colorado's warm summers and using concealer to cover marks. I became an actress playing the role of normal teenager with such conviction that sometimes I almost believed it myself. One night, I woke to shouting from my parents' bedroom. This wasn't unusual, but something about the intensity made me creep to my door and listen. Through the walls, I could hear Mom's sobbing and Dad's low, threatening voice. There was a sharp sound like a slap, then Mom's crying became muffled. In that moment, I realized Mom wasn't just failing to protect me. She was also trapped. It didn't excuse her behavior or her participation in my abuse, but it helped me understand her better. She was caught in her own web of fear. That revelation brought new terror. If Mom, an adult with resources and options, couldn't escape this situation, what hope did I have? For the first time, I seriously considered running away. I researched youth shelters online using school computers to avoid detection. But reality was daunting. I had no money, nowhere to go, and the terrifying prospect that my parents, with their connections throughout Denver, would find me and make everything infinitely worse. So I stayed, adapting like a creature evolving in a hostile environment. I developed almost supernatural awareness of both parents' moods, learning to read the smallest signs. From how Mom set down her coffee cup to the rhythm of Dad's footsteps on the hardwood floors. I knew when to make myself scarce, when to be useful but invisible, when rare windows of relative safety might open. It was exhausting, this constant vigilance, but necessary for survival. Mom's behavior became increasingly erratic. Some days she'd be almost kind, slipping me extra snacks or warning me with a look that Dad was in a dangerous mood. Other days she seemed to resent my very existence, criticizing everything from my posture to my breathing, as if my presence was personally offensive. I could never predict which version I'd encounter. As my 16th birthday approached, I allowed myself small hope that things might improve. 16 seemed significant. A step closer to adulthood and freedom. Maybe my parents would recognize this milestone, loosen restrictions, acknowledge my growing maturity. It was foolish hope, but hope is often foolish in the face of harsh experience. The day came and went without celebration. Mom was in Los Angeles on business, and Dad spent the day at his clinic. Amanda brought me a cupcake at lunch with a single candle we lit in the school bathroom. A small act of defiance and friendship that meant more than any elaborate party could have. That night, writing by flashlight, I made myself a promise. I would survive 2 more years in this house. I would excel academically, secure scholarships, and find my way out. By the time I turned 17, the pressure had intensified to an almost unbearable degree. Junior year brought college applications, SAT preparation, and increasingly critical decisions about my future. For most classmates, this was excitement mixed with normal anxiety. For me, it was a battleground where my desperate desire for independence clashed with my parents' determination to control every aspect of my life. "You'll apply to University of Colorado and Denver University," Mom announced one evening at dinner, not even phrasing it as a question. "Pre-med track. I've already spoken to Dr. Williams about your application. You can live at home and commute. No need for unnecessary expenses." My stomach dropped. The casual way she'd planned my entire future without any input made me physically ill. No Northwestern, no journalism, no escape. But Mom, I was thinking about journalism programs, I said carefully, trying to keep my voice steady. I've been working on the school newspaper, and Mrs. Patterson thinks I have real potential. Mom's face darkened. Journalism, a dying field full of liberal troublemakers. No daughter of mine is wasting my money on such nonsense. Medicine is respectable with actual earning potential. Rebecca's right, Jarvis. Dad chimed in, always the loyal echo. Think practically. Journalism is for people who couldn't get into real professional programs. I should have backed down then. Experience had taught me that disagreement only led to pain. But something about this moment, having the next 4 years of my life decided without my consent, made something snap inside me. I don't want to be a doctor, I said, my voice stronger than intended. I want to write. I want to go to Chicago. I've been researching scholarships, so it wouldn't even cost you anything. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom set down her fork with deliberate slowness, a gesture I'd learned to fear. Go to your room, she said quietly. We'll discuss your attitude adjustment later. Later came 3 hours after Dad had gone to bed with his sleeping pills and whiskey. She entered my room without knocking, closing the door with a soft click that somehow sounded more threatening than a slam. The discussion that followed left me with bruised ribs and a split lip. I learned that she'd found the scholarship applications I'd hidden in my desk. I learned that defiance wouldn't be tolerated. I learned that dreams were luxuries I wasn't entitled to. The next morning, Dad glanced at my swollen face over breakfast but said nothing. I applied concealer carefully before school, an art I'd unfortunately perfected. Mr. Davis, my guidance counselor, noticed something was wrong during our scheduled meeting about college applications. His eyes lingered on the bruise I'd failed to completely cover near my jawline. Jarvis, is everything all right at home? He asked carefully. Fine, I replied automatically. I walked into my closet door last night. I'm such a klutz sometimes. He didn't look convinced. You know you can talk to me if you're having problems, right? Anything you say would be confidential. Almost broke then. Something in his kind eyes made me want to spill everything, to finally let an adult into my nightmare. But fear held me back. The day I graduated high school should have been triumphant. Despite everything, I'd maintained a perfect 4.0 GPA, earned National Honor Society membership, and received recognition for my writing. But as I sat in Pepsi Center wearing my cap and gown, all I could think about was the plan I'd spent months perfecting. That evening, my parents hosted a graduation dinner at our home. Not for my benefit, of course, but because appearances mattered. Extended family, Dad's medical colleagues, and select neighbors were invited to celebrate David and Rebecca Martinez's successful daughter. The future doctor, the perfect extension of their achievement. I played my part flawlessly. The grateful daughter, the academic star, the girl with the bright future carefully planned by loving parents. No one noticed my hands trembling as I smiled and accepted congratulations. Jarvis has already been accepted to University of Colorado, Mom announced over dessert, raising her wine glass. Pre-med track. We couldn't be prouder. The guests murmured approval. No one noticed the way my stomach clenched or how I gripped my water glass to keep my hand steady. After the last guests departed, leaving behind gift cards I wasn't allowed to open yet, the house fell eerily quiet. I began clearing plates while Mom stumbled upstairs, exhausted from maintaining her perfect hostess act. Dad loosened his tie and poured himself scotch, watching me work. Leave those, he said. The cleaning service handles it tomorrow. I set down the plates carefully. Dad, I need to talk to you about college. His expression hardened immediately. There's nothing to discuss. Arrangements have been made. But I haven't accepted UC's offer, I said, surprised by my boldness. I've been accepted to Northwestern with a partial scholarship. I want to study journalism. The silence was suffocating. Dad set his glass down with deliberate care. You did what? His voice was dangerously soft. I applied to other schools. I got into Northwestern. I swallowed hard but continued. I'm 18 now. I have the right to choose my own path. Rights. He laughed. A harsh sound devoid of humor. You want to talk about rights after everything we've provided? The roof over your head, the opportunities you've been given. And this is how you repay us? With defiance and disrespect. I took a step back, recognizing the dangerous glint in his eyes, but something had broken loose inside me. Perhaps it was years of suppressed feelings, or maybe I simply had nothing left to lose. You haven't provided opportunities, I said, my voice shaking but clear. You've provided a prison. You never asked what I want or who I am. You just decided everything for me. His face contorted with rage. In that moment, he dropped all pretense of being the respected surgeon, the pillar of the community. But before he could reach me, Mom appeared in the doorway, her eyes wild with fury. How dare you, she hissed, lunging forward and grabbing my arm with bruising force. After everything I've sacrificed for this family, you ungrateful little bitch. The first blow caught me on the cheekbone. The second connected with my jaw and I heard something crack. I tasted blood in my mouth, felt the room spinning. Through the haze of pain, I saw Dad standing there, not stopping her, just watching with cold satisfaction. The final blow sent me crumpling to the kitchen floor, my jaw screaming with agony. Maybe now you'll learn to keep that gutter mouth shut, Dad said, straightening his sleeves like he'd just completed some minor task. They left me there on the cold tiles. I lay still for what felt like hours, the granite against my cheek providing the only relief from the throbbing pain. Eventually, I dragged myself to the bathroom. The face in the mirror was almost unrecognizable. Left eye swollen shut, lips split, jaw visibly misaligned. I knew without medical training that my jaw was broken. Normal parents would have rushed me to the emergency room. Mine simply went to bed, secure in the knowledge that I couldn't, tell anyone what happened. But as I crawled to my bedroom, a strange calm settled over me. They'd gone too far this time. The physical evidence was undeniable, and something had shifted inside me along with the bones in my face. For 2 weeks, I survived on liquids, unable to chew or sometimes even speak. The pain was constant, grinding, inescapable. But it clarified my thinking rather than clouding it. During those agonizing days, I formulated my plan with methodical precision. I reconnected with Amanda through a secret email address created at the library. Her response came within hours. Whatever you need, whenever you need it, I'm here. I documented everything. Photos of my healing jaw, detailed accounts of abuse, recorded conversations using a small device Amanda had given me. I gathered evidence methodically, knowing my word alone wouldn't be enough against my parents' reputation. Mrs. Patterson helped me connect with Lisa Chen, a lawyer specializing in domestic violence who had escaped her own abusive marriage. Lisa reviewed my evidence and outlined my options. Your documentation is excellent, she told me. Since you're 18, we can file for a restraining order immediately and get you into protective housing. The date for my escape crystallized when I overheard my parents planning Mom's birthday party. They'd host dinner at our home, inviting colleagues and family. It would be perfect. Witnesses present, parents unable to react violently without exposing themselves. The night of the party, I waited until all the guests had arrived. Then I stood up during Mom's birthday toast and played the recordings on our sound system. My broken jaw, their threats, everything. The silence was absolute. Mom lunged toward me, but I'd already called the police before the party began. Officers arrived within minutes. As they led both parents away in handcuffs, Mom for assault, Dad as an accomplice, I felt something I'd never experienced before. Complete freedom. 1 year later, I sit in my tiny Chicago apartment, finishing an article for Northwestern's newspaper about recognizing abuse. My jaw healed slightly crooked, but now I use it to speak truths, tell stories that matter, advocate for others still trapped. The girl who was afraid to speak is gone. In her place stands someone who discovered her own power and will never surrender it again. If this story resonated with you, please share it. Sometimes knowing you're not alone is the first step toward writing your own next chapter.